So the government has sought more sources. And for tactical missiles, Northrop was not a primary provider. And we're getting the opportunity now to become a second source supplier for solid rocket motors in that area. We had focused more on strategic missiles, think bigger solid rocket motors. And now we are getting qualified to produce some of the smaller ones for products like PAC-3.
Do you see more room to grow in the munitions space specifically, since it seems that that is an area of acute focus for the Pentagon right now?
Yes, we believe that's going to be one of the fastest growing parts of our market, if not the fastest growing market. And we are positioned with capacity. I mentioned that 2 million square feet of manufacturing space. Some of that is dedicated to solid rocket motor production. And we had a head start there. We started that investment more than 3 years ago. So we've already doubled capacity. We have another plant that we are building today that will take capacity to about 3x what it was when we started this expansion. So that positions us, as we are signing these new contracts and becoming qualified to be a supplier, to be ready to go now.
Well, and I want to go back to your point about how sometimes there is one supplier of one key component. Is that the biggest challenge in scaling up so much of this, is specific bottlenecks in the supply chain such as that? And do you feel like you have enough visibility into the sub-tier parts of the supply chain right now?
We have been focused on increasing that visibility all the way down the supply chain. We've always had very good visibility to our first tier and even our second tier supply, but we now are down to the material level, the very commodities that our first and second tier suppliers are relying upon, and we're doing capacity planning with those suppliers as well, so that we can assure from the very basic parts, which in a solid rocket motor is chemicals, for instance, that we have enough supply to build all the way up to the manufactured product.
Well, and you're doing this work as a company, but what is the Pentagon asking of you in terms of its own visibility into that? Are they seeking information from you or giving you information?
It's a little bit of both. It is a partnership. It is mostly asking for the information that we have and then offering to supplement that, because they can see beyond our portfolio into the demands of other companies that are supplying them, and they have a fuller picture of what that supply ecosystem looks like in the aggregated demand.
Well, trying to get that fuller picture on the Pentagon side, the Deputy Defense Secretary Feinberg sent out a memo just last week asking for more specific cost and pricing data. And I wonder what your reaction to that was, and whether or not it is asking for something overly burdensome for you and other companies, or if this is relatively on par with what Northrop already would be providing as it seeks a contract.
In most cases, we're already providing that data today, and we have systems set up that allow us to collect it, and we are all for transparency, and so we're happy to provide it. There are companies that don't have systems, they're called cost accounting systems, that collect that data and have auditability and transparency to the government for that data today. And so I am sure that from some in industry, you might hear that this is going to require them to take extra steps. For the most part, this is something that we already are structured to do.
Well, and let's talk about different contracts you may be doing that for. Northrop is competing right now for a Navy fighter. The FAXX could be awarded sometime soon. And I just wonder what you feel is the company's positioning right now in terms of being well positioned to potentially have to develop that program from the ground up, while also trying to scale up everything else, B-21 included.
Yes. We've spent a lot of time looking at how we will execute the program, and I feel confident in our team's ability to do that with all of the other things that we have underway. For each team gets a dedicated set of individuals who are focused solely on executing that program, and at the same time, our company has resources that can surge to support aspects of our business, like an FAXX program, which would have a steep ramp at the beginning. And that has worked very well for us. We perform well in those early days to get a program off to a running start. And in this case, we've ensured that we have suppliers ready to do the same, investing alongside of us and prepared to execute.
Well, can you broadly outline, and you don't have to get too specific, but what the Pentagon Defense Industrial Base and experts have wanted to see from you in terms of sourcing material?
They have asked for transparency into our supply chain on most of our contracts, and we are providing that to them. And in many ways, that's something we already are doing ourselves. We want to make sure that that capacity exists, that we know exactly where it's coming from, and that we have price transparency so that we can negotiate on behalf of ourselves, but also the federal government in those engagements. What I will say is there are certain aspects of the supply chain. Take microelectronics, for instance, where we have some dependency on rare earths. We need government assistance in those areas because we aren't just working to build a supply chain. We need a supply chain that has national security resiliency built in. And if the economics do not support those minerals being mined, packaged, and available from trusted sources, we can't change that broader ecosystem alone as a company. The federal government can bring together tools in their toolbox that allow them to do that, whether it's just basic foreign policy, whether it's through laws and regulations, or whether it's through subsidies and financing to support those industries. So you see that happening, and that's really important to bolster the resiliency of our supply chain at the lowest level.
Well, because you raised rare earths and critical minerals, I wonder if you get concerned at all as you see, for example, the U.S. potentially threatening to secondary sanction Chinese banks over providing financial lifeline to Iran. If China could choose to retaliate by once again slapping export controls on those things, do you have stockpiles that you can draw upon? I just wonder at what point it would become mission critical that be an issue that be resolved for the sake of the defense industry.
We do have stockpiles that we can rely on, and we have a plan, more importantly, to remove those dependencies over time. And that is happening, as I said, in conjunction with steps the U.S. federal government is taking to enable an ecosystem of supply to exist outside of China.
I want to talk about the B-21 and the investment that you are making into that program. You've committed $2.5 billion through 2029. What gives you the confidence to make that investment? Is there a way in which this contract is structured to ensure that those orders are going to be there to provide protection of those dollars that you were putting in?
We have a clear demand signal from our customer that they will buy at that higher rate if we are able to produce. And we have an evaluation ongoing by the U.S. Air Force to determine a program of record size. Right now, it is at least 100 aircraft, and we anticipate that that may increase as a result of comments that have been made from COCOM commanders who have said we need more B-21s. And so we wanted to go ahead and take the first step and demonstrate that we will commit the investment to increase the rate at which we produce to enable them to consider a larger program of record.
Is it the companies that should be bearing that burden, that financial risk of building out capacity such as that? Or should it be more reliant on the Pentagon itself providing that funding?
I believe it should be a partnership, and in the case of B-21 it is. We need a clear demand signal and one that the government will stand behind on a multi-year basis. What then they should expect of us is that we will commit the resources and make those investments, and then back to the government, we should expect a fair return for those investments. This discussion has been very prominent over the last 18 months in our negotiations, and I think we're very much aligned with the department on what we each need from each other and how these business deals should be constructed.
Well, and when we think about these new framework agreements that, of course, are longer in duration, has that changed the game for you, or because some of them are notional in nature, you have to wait until they translate into an actual firm contract with money behind it before you can really action it?
There has to be some trust. I mean, to your point, the intention is good. The contract is the contract. But at the end of the day, we have needed to have that trust. The U.S. federal government operates under annual appropriations. Sometimes those appropriations aren't let on time. And so we have had to lean in as an industry and sometimes finance the federal government to keep programs going. We've had to trust that annual appropriations will continue to support programs. And year after year, those decisions can and sometimes are revisited. So there is an element of trust, but there is that in any business. You have to project demand into the future. there are very few industries where you can get that contractually committed. If I were selling to consumers, no consumer is going to promise me that they're going to buy my goods 5 years, 10 years into the future either. So I don't see this industry as any different. We have to have confidence in that demand signal. And often that confidence comes not just through a contract, but understanding our product, what its use is, and whether that use is going to be enduring in the threat environment that our customers are going to face. And we make those commitments.
On appropriations, obviously this administration would like to see a lot more money appropriated to the Pentagon. $1.5 trillion is what they've asked for. They've also asked for billions of dollars in supplemental funding, and it's not clear whether or not either of those things has an immediate future on Capitol Hill. It's a very big question as to what Congress is going to approve, and of course we're coming up on a midterm election. The balance of power could very well change, and many of these agreements that we're talking about extend beyond just the length of a presidential term. So are you confident, frankly, that the government will be holding up its end of the bargain, even if power shifts?
I am, and it's because we've now seen over multiple administrations, Democrat and Republican alike, that there has been a reconciliation of national security interest to budget priorities. And it has looked pretty constant for the last decade or so in terms of where our priorities are, how that translates into programmatic funding and appropriations. And defense approps have been some of the most bipartisan bills when you look at voting. So I do have confidence that that demand signal is going to continue and be fairly steady. There's always going to be some shifts, and we've seen that for sure in each administration within the broader bounds of national security interest as to where their specialized priorities lie. And we need to be, as an industry, able to adapt to the threat environment as well as an administration's policies and priorities. But at the end of the day, we've seen more commonality than we have difference. And so I expect that's going to continue to be the case. And it's the foundation upon which we make assumptions and make business decisions.
Well, and of course, it's not just the U.S. defense budget that the president is interested in. He is encouraging other governments to invest more into their own defense industrial bases, NATO and European allies specifically. Does that open up opportunity internationally for Northrop Grumman? How are you thinking about that?
It does. We are seeing the most robust demand environment, not just in the United States, but globally, that we've seen in a very long time. And it is driven by this broader threat landscape. Europe has gone through quite a transformation in terms of focus on national security as a government spending priority. And we have seen that now endure since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and expect that will continue to be the case. The Middle East has been a strong source of demand and is at an elevated level now, even considering recent events. And Asia has been a growing marketplace for us for years, and expect that to continue. So when you look across the globe, it's not just one area of strength that we're seeing in national security spending. It's very broad-based, and it's for common products. So that's another interesting dynamic. We can take a product line and it is applicable, whether it's missile defense, space. These are growing areas of interest all over the globe.
Well, so is it going to end up that it's a lot of joint ventures as all these different parts of the world are investing in their own defense industry? Is it going to be localized in some way and you have to work your way in? How do you envision it?
It is localized to some degree. We try to ensure that there's local content for business partners and suppliers in any country where we're selling. It's varying degrees. Sometimes we're building a product, designing, developing, and building it in the United States, and it's the integration that's happening with a local partner. Other times, it's pure co-development with an international partner, where from the beginning, we are working together to build the product. And then sometimes it's co-production, where we have designed a product and we will sell that IP to a partner to build in country. So all different types of models can work, but what we see is our customers in other countries want some sovereign content. They want to see jobs in their country. They want to see the ability to share in the economic gain of what they're spending on national security.
Well, as the administration is pushing for other countries to be thinking more critically about these things and spending more money, there's other initiatives that have come with Trump 2.0, including the Golden Dome. Where is that in the arc of idea from the president, PowerPoint presentation, to actual contracts and things getting real? Where are we in the arc?
It's very tangible. We have an architecture, we have programs, and we are executing on those programs. And, you know, when you think of Golden Dome, it's not a program like B-21 is a program. It is a collection of programs, some of which are new capabilities that don't exist today, and so they're being developed like a space-based interceptor. Others are buying more of things that we already are producing. And so we look in this area called Golden Dome, and I know there's a lot of mystery that's shrouding it because it is complex. It's not one thing that can be pointed to and described, and it's going to continue to evolve over time as the government looks at different products and how they might fit into the architecture. They'll make decisions on what they're going to buy, how much of any given product they're going to buy. So it's also not set in time what is Golden Dome, but a lot of progress has been made in the last 12 months.
What share do you realistically expect Northrop Grumman would get in that initiative?
There will be a lot of players because it is an architecture. No company is going to have the preponderance of the Golden Dome architecture, nor would we want that. It's a lot of work to be done in a fairly short period of time to get the Golden Dome architecture deployed. And so it is a many company effort. But we are a company that can participate in almost every aspect of the architecture, so we do expect to have a decent share at the end of the day.
Well, and including in space-based interceptors, as you mentioned. Critics would say this may be more technologically possible now, but it still may not be cost-effective. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is this something that the U.S. can afford at scale?
We believe it can be cost effective, and you made an important point in the way you framed the question. Technology today has advanced to a degree that what may not have been possible, or I would argue was possible but very expensive 10, 15 years ago, is much more affordable today. And that's the new information that needs to be incorporated into those who are analyzing space-based interceptors and the solutions that are being offered. And the approach that is being taken on Golden Dome is to allow for that prototyping and then demonstration before the government commits to a particular solution. And that makes a lot of sense.
As we're thinking about what the government is committing to or what it would like to be able to commit to, Golden Dome, things we've already discussed, building out more munitions capacity, investing in the nuclear triad. You want the submarine, Sentinel, B-21, as we talked about. Can it do all of these things realistically at the same time, or do there have to be trade-offs somewhere? And if so, where do you expect those hard trade-offs might be?
We believe that industry can provide the capacity and the people to do those things simultaneously. There has to be budget to support it, which is why this administration has asked for a $1.5 trillion defense budget. And to the extent that that is funded, then yes, all of these programs fit within that budget request. If that is not funded, then there are going to be priorities that need to be selected. And what we see is that the programs that we have are largely sitting in the base budget, which is a reflection that they are the priorities, continuing our nation's strategic deterrent, increasing munitions spending, supporting programs that are well underway in development and production. And so we feel well positioned, even if the base budget is what is funded this year, but we certainly recognize the need for more and are hopeful that Congress will find a path to at least support above the base budget. When you think about what's needed for ongoing operations, when you think about the impacts of inflation over the last 5 years, in real dollars, we're actually spending less on national security today than we were before the pandemic. And that's what the administration has recognized and wants to make up for with these significant increases in budget requests.
I'd like to talk about technology in our remaining moments before we turn things over to the audience. Where are the next technology areas that Northrop is excited about? We talked about space-based interceptors, but where else?
Asking me to pick a technology area that our team is most focused is like asking me to tell you which of my children I like better. I can't do that. And that's the beauty of our company and our industry. We serve a common purpose, which is national security, but we operate across a very wide spectrum of technologies, everything from microelectronics and the future of compute, including quantum computing, to areas in space that involve space exploration, space resiliency, which are new arts and missions being conducted in space. And then, of course, aerodynamics and the future of aviation are also changing. We call B-21 a sixth-generation aircraft, or FAXX a sixth-generation aircraft. That is the future of what our air platforms need to operate in. And that, too, is an evolving area of science and material science. So we are excited about all of those areas. There is no favorite child. But the important thing is, tech is advancing in all of these domains at a faster rate. And so our engineering organization is really delighted to be able to work on such a variety of things and be resourced, not just by us, but by the government to explore these future technologies.
Well, and there's new technology disruptors entering the defense space as well. Are they fundamentally competitors to you at the end of the day, or are they bringing additive capabilities that can work alongside you?
Both. And that has been the way this industry has operated. It's a bit unique. Most industries, you compete with companies, and you rarely partner with companies in your own industry who do similar things to what you do. Ours is different. We often find ourselves collaborating with big and small companies alike, companies that are older than us and companies that are much younger. And that's how it works. You have to be open to taking good ideas and technology from a wide variety of partners and embracing them into a solution for the good of our warfighter and the taxpayer. And we are very open to that. Everything doesn't have to be invented in Northrop Grumman for us to bring it forward in one of our solutions.
So is it mostly partnerships with these players then, or could you see Northrop Grumman at one point absorbing them, acquiring them?
We could see ourselves doing that. I'm not sure that in the near term serves the interest, right? There's a big market to be served, and more competition to serve it is a good thing. And we will compete vigorously with these companies while they're offering something different than us. But when we partner together, we will operate as complete teammates. And we know how to do that. It's how the industry works. And we embrace anyone who comes into the industry to do the same, because that's what's best for our customers.
And finally, how are you thinking as a CEO about AI, especially a CEO that has the cyber experience you do? Is this something that will just bring greater cost savings in a way in which you can take advantage of it, or is there a real threat to the speed with which this technology is advancing?
We are seeing it both as a benefit, because we can use AI frontier models now to identify vulnerabilities, and then it becomes a responsibility for us to respond quickly to those, so we're having to scale our cyber operations. The good news is, in a company like ours, we have had a robust cybersecurity operation for a long period of time. We don't just have to defend ourselves against actors who might want to seek financial gain. We have to defend our information against adversaries like nation states who want to seek to get access to our designs and secrets. So we have had a very robust cybersecurity program. We're needing to scale it and make sure it can be responsive at a much higher rate of speed to what the frontier models are helping us to identify.